Hey there, and welcome to Pursuing Truth podcast, where we dive into the different topics of faith, family, and freedom, all in the pursuit of truth. I'm your host, Megan Victoria, and I am so glad you're here. We are talking about a topic that really hits close to home for so many of us, which is surrender. And someone who is joining me today, she really gets it. She's a mom of 4 boys, which honestly deserves a standing ovation already. She's a wife, coach, and an author, and just a beautiful soul that has helped so many women fight peace in the middle of their mess. She's also the host of the Called and Courageous Christian Woman podcast and the co-host of Better Together Christian Women's Retreat. So please welcome the lovely Britton.
Yay, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for the awesome intro.
Yeah, girl, Britton, I'm so excited that you're here. And I just already know that the listeners are going to be so blessed by what you bring today. I feel like our hearts are very similar, and I'm just so excited. And I would love to, just before we dive in, can you tell our listeners just a little bit more in your own words about who is Britton on this random Thursday afternoon?
Yeah, so, it's funny because I do all of those things you mentioned, but also I work full-time as a school psychologist. So all of these kind of fun and new things that I've been working on as I've been called more into ministry, kind of came from left field for me. I've very blindly just been walking into what God is laying out in front of me, so often not knowing where that's leading at all. And it's been really fun. So my school psych background I bring into it is really, I kind of love the concept of blending the psychology behind things with solid biblical practice. So my faith and my education background and being able to merge those two things has just been such a blessing for me.
Yeah.
And I think a blessing to those that are kind of starting to come into my orbit and follow me and joining me on my podcast. I've received just overwhelming feedback. So this whole thing, the last, year has just been so fun and exciting as I'm kind of learning where I fit in this ministry world and what God is calling me into.
I think it's so special that you connect the psychology and almost the science of it and the spiritual and the biblical. I feel so heard in that because that's my desire too. I think that's what really connected me to you, is just hearing that that's your passion. And isn't it crazy how God will kind of just thrust you into something and you don't even know, and you're not even prepared, and it's just okay, here we go, God. How have you kind of been navigating that and staying sane while also being a mama and all of it?
I know, it's crazy. My sanity. So what I women, it's all about surrender and how that brings peace, because I'm very type A, and my identity actually has always been rooted in my performance, how much I can do, how busy I am, how much I bring to the table, how many things I can do at once with my multitasking. And so what happened kind of within my testimony was I learned that's not really something to be proud of, and that's not really what your identity should be, right? So I have to remind myself, and I teach my clients this as well, surrendering and pursuing peace is not a one and done deal. And I have to remind myself and use my own teaching all the time to protect my own peace and my sanity, as you put it, because I love, I get so excited about things and then I get hyper fixated on it. And then I go down this rabbit hole of I'm going to do 10 different things at once because I'm so passionate about it myself. Because I'm wait, I'm starting to feel burned out, or I'm not enjoying this, or am I really staying focused on where God is calling me, or am I getting distracted and trying to discern that? So kind of learned or been learning as I go, and I have to be mindful of the same things I teach other women, because life and the enemy can be distracting and try to take us off course.
Yeah.
So
big time. That's so thoughtful, and I think very wise of you. The fact that you are constantly bringing yourself back and almost humbling yourself and saying, hey, the things that I'm teaching you, they're also for me as well. And I think that takes a lot of humility to bring yourself back and say, hey, let's revisit the basics and remember that I need peace as well. And I need to ground myself, to anchor myself back in his peace, right? He's the Prince of Peace. I love that. As a coach myself, I relate to that a lot. It's like, oh, I got to go back and remind myself that these aren't just things that I've mastered. It's an ever going process, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Intentional, like being intentional in it and checking yourself once in a while. And even, in the psychology world, we call it metacognition, like thinking about your thinking. And then the biblical side of that would be the renewing of your mind, right? But making sure, like, first and foremost, I'm focused on God and what he's calling me to do. And so I might get excited about like some of these other things, but is that what God is calling me to do? Because I truly believe he's calling me to reach very specific women. And so sometimes when I get sidetracked, I'm like, wait, is this what Britton wants? And is this a distraction? Or is this really what God is calling me into? So it's really starting from that posture of, well, making room for your faith first and foremost every single day. And one of my coaches actually calls it like making God the CEO, not just of your life, but your business as well.
I love that.
And like meeting with him and really being intentional and prayerful, meditating on what he's calling you to, not what the whole world is calling you to.
He is our CEO of our business and the Lord of our life. We can never go wrong when we constantly remind ourselves of that. And I heard you say you're a type A personality. I am a type B, but I think I often get confused with a type A person because I've built these structures in my life to really keep me accountable and on track. And with peace and surrender being like these two really big themes in your life, how have you put things in your life to make sure you stay in that lane?
Oh, that's such a good question. So again, it comes back to intentionality. So being very intentional in how I am organizing and systematically planning out like my day and my week, and really staying focused on big picture. Like, where am I? Where do I feel like God is leading me? But, sometimes he'll take you like all the way left and you're like, okay, I don't know how we ended up here, but I see why it happened that way. So it's almost a balance of surrendering and following where it leads and just being faithful and obedient, but also taking action. So like God can be steering you somewhere, but you still need to take the steps forward and have faith in him that he's leading you where you're supposed to end up.
Yeah.
And then being open to when maybe he does take you on, like, we're going left when I thought we were going right. Like I said, prioritizing being in your Bible every day, prioritizing prayer. Like you said, I have 4 boys and a husband and a full-time job and the podcast and the coaching and so many things going on at once. And it is very clear to me when God starts to not intentionally, but starts to fall to the wayside. Like maybe I didn't start with my Bible that morning, or maybe I didn't get to my devotional.
Yeah.
Like I have to put that first. I really have to put that first in my day to stay on track.
I love that. It's like our first fruits, where we really can't go wrong when we remind ourselves of not only who he is, but who we are. And along the theme of surrender, it makes me think of when we are reminded of that every day. Like you're in your word, you're worshiping and praying to him every morning, makes these things that you're juggling, whether it's being a mom or running a business or doing these retreats or the podcast, they no longer have that heaviness of, if I don't show up in this way, then everything's going to crumble and fall. It kind of alleviates that pressure off of us that it's not all on us. When we commune with God every day, it's a reminder that it's a partnership with him. I love that you said that he can take the reins. And the quiet place, it's an active space of just letting go and surrendering whatever roles in our lives we have. It's constantly saying, you know what, God, you're bigger than all of it. And I think the more we retreat with him, the easier that surrendering becomes.
So good. And I think that was a turning point for me where I like to have a sense of control, like historically. And so to not have control used to not feel very safe to me. And it gave me a false sense of peace. Like if I can just control all the things and I can do all the things and I can fix all of the things, then I'm just filled with peace because I'm in control. But then the second something goes wrong, like it's such a facade and your peace is just immediately disrupted, right? So surrender, what I learned is how freeing it is. Like it seems kind of counterintuitive when you're a person that really functions out of wanting to maintain that control. But there's a freedom in knowing you don't have to control it all. You don't have to know all the things. You don't have to fix all the things. You don't have to be all of the things for all of the people. That's God's job. And when we're just gripping onto that, we're not opening our hands to better things that He has for our lives and the good plans He has for our lives. Because what He can do with control is far greater than what I can do with my false sense of control.
Because that's what it is, right? I think the enemy will convince us of our power, our ability, our control over things. And you're so right. It's such a false sense of control. Like that hits me. I think so many women can relate to that tug of war of surrender and control and wanting to trust God, but also like wanting to hold on to the reins. And I think, for the women who are listening who feel that tug of war, what would you speak to them? Like
when you are walking through life in that way, thinking you can control everything or need to control everything, you are putting so much pressure on yourself that is probably causing more anxiety, not less. And I think we get kind of blind to that because it can feel scary to hand over the reins. But that is, like I said, it's a freedom you can give yourself. It is a huge weight off of your chest. In my book, I talk a lot about all of the things I was carrying, not just metaphorically, but literally weighing me down. And I had so many just cracks inside of me from like this giant weight I was carrying. And through not letting it go, I was not leaving room for God to fill those cracks. I was relying on myself and failing miserably at it. Like, despite my best efforts, all of those cracks and crevices were filling with anxiety, overwhelm, and burden, and shame, and guilt. And as soon as I was able to hand that giant boulder I was carrying over to God, the Holy Spirit just overwhelmingly started filling all of those cracks within me with peace and freedom and redemption and love. So I guess to speak to their heart, it's what are you carrying that's weighing you down? And really think, like, if I handed this over to God, what would that leave room for Him to do in my life? Where am I not leaving room for God because I'm relying on self? And if I relied on Him, how different would that look to fill all of those spaces within me?
So good. It's like such a simple question. What would life look like if I chose another way? The way that I'm doing it is causing me suffering and chaos and pain. And it's something so simple, but we miss it all the time. There's so many of us who just don't look inward. We don't allow ourselves to be introspective. And so because of that, we're missing out on all of these areas of our heart that are really crying out. Like I'm carrying this huge boulder of weight. I'm feeling like I'm drowning and I can't swim. And if we just took that one moment to ask ourselves, what would life look like if I surrendered this to God? What would it look like if I did it another way? That's so powerful. And it's honestly profound, but it's such a simple thing. You've done that work of the introspection and looking inward and really being honest with yourself. If we're not honest with ourselves, how can we ever be honest in our relationship with the Lord? If we don't really know what's going on with us, how can we bring that to Him? How do we even know what to surrender to Him? I would love to know more about that process for you, getting real with yourself, asking yourself those questions.
Yeah. Okay, so I could get real specific here with my testimony. So I'm just going to lay it all on the table. So, and I talk about this in my book and it's no secret, but when things really changed for me was, like I said, I was doing everything. And when I say I was doing everything, I was in graduate school. I had just had a baby and had a C-section and actually almost died. I had multiple blood transfusions. Thank God. Thank God I'm here. But within 2 weeks of that, I was in my internship. So I was back to work. And most people recover even just from like a successful or safe C-section without complications need weeks. And so I was immediately back to work. We were kind of coming off of COVID. My baby and the next one up were only 18 months apart. My husband and I were pretty new to living in this state. And after COVID and grad school and 2 pregnancies back to back and all of these things, both of us were feeling pretty cut off from the world, not a big support system. And in that, my sense of peace and control, like I said, came from like, well, just look at all these things I can do. I can hold it all together. I just had a C-section. It's fine. And actually a lot of my identity was rooted in that. Like I had people say to me all the time, girl, how do you do it? You're such an inspiration. You're so inspiring. Like, I don't know how you do it. I'm like, oh, well, you just do. Again, that wasn't really something to be admired, but I was finding admiration from other people in that. And so I'm like, wow, I must just like really be killing it over here. When inside I'm crumbling. On top of that, the way my husband dealt with his stress was totally different. And he was deep in to self-medicating for his depression, drinking too much. And so that was another stressor for me, right? Because I'm watching literally the man that I love change before my eyes. And I'm literally just watching like the devil just have such a grip on him and just feeling like I had all the answers for him. Like, just go to the gym, just go to bed earlier, just like go join a rec league, make some more friends, just do this and this and that. And like all of your problems will be fixed. I can fix all of your problems. Just do what I tell you to do. And really in that, what I was doing was basically placing all of the blame on him. Like some days my support for him looked like I'm just going to love him out of it. And some days I was just so resentful that it was like, well, maybe if love's not going to work, I'm just going to be mean or cold, right? Like I'm just going to try to control your decisions and what you're doing. And so I was actually at the altar at church and just broke down in this woman's arms and kind of just told her everything that was going on. And I was like, my husband is struggling and I don't recognize him and I'm overwhelmed and I can't do all of this on my own. I can't fix him. I've been trying to fix him. And I just very audibly heard God tell me like it was done and to give it to him. And like I needed to stop. I needed to stop trying to be everything for my family. And I needed to, here's the thing, like God very clearly told me to surrender, but I still didn't know how. I remember my grandpa telling me like, just give it to God. You have to give it to God. And I was like, but I don't know what that means. Like I was pretty new into, I guess, getting back into my faith at that time. So I'm like, how do I give it to God? Like, especially when so much of myself is controlling things and being in control and knowing like I can do it all. How I'm like, do I just throw it at him? How do I give it? I heard God very clearly telling me to just give it to him. So I'm like, I don't really know what that means. I'm still scared, but I'm just going to do it. I'm going to leave my husband alone and I am going to start doing exactly what you just talked about and looking inside of myself and really thinking about like, what can I actually control and what can I not? And the things I can't control, not my business anymore. Like, God, take it wherever those things go. I'm just going to trust that whatever your plan is, whether I can see it in the moment or not, is how it is supposed to be. And then the things I can control are myself and going to church more and learning how to forgive my husband. That was a big one for me. I was like, I can spend more time with my kids. I can learn about forgiveness. I ordered a forgiveness book and a forgiveness journal. And I just really started praying for my husband and praying for myself and my family without trying to tell my husband what to do. I was like, I'm just going to lead by example and either like God is going to touch his heart and he's going to follow, or like, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like. I'm just going to walk forward anyway and do what I can do. And so in that surrendering, my husband had room to breathe. Like he'll tell you today, there was such a shift in you and he didn't know what it was. Like he wasn't even at church with me that day. I didn't verbalize any of this to him. I didn't say like, hey, I'm going to start backing off. I just led by example and started giving him space. And he says like, I had room to breathe.
Wow.
I didn't feel like I was disappointing you every single day. He wasn't living in like guilt and shame, which is not what I wanted to cause him, but it's what I was causing him, right? So like it was, I guess to answer your question, a very long way. It was just something, I just did it. And I was like, I still don't know how and I still feel fearful, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to just look at what can I control truly, and it's only me. That's it. And what can I not control? And all of those other things need to go to the wayside. And I need to quit trying to have my hand in that.
That is so beautifully shared. There's so many nuggets of gold in there. I think it's so beautiful how surrender often looks like trusting God. It's like, who do we trust more? Do we trust in our own ability or God's ability? It's telling God, I believe that I can do it better than you. That's kind of what's underneath there. I
Really?
think when you made that decision, you're just at your breaking point. You're like, I've tried it my way. I've tried to show up for my husband and control these things to make me feel safe and to help him. It's not moving the needle. And that surrender in that moment was you saying, I trust you, God, more than I trust in my ability to move the needle, to change him or to change my situation. And I think that that's so beautiful. You said something too. You're often presented with just have more faith or just let it go and let God. And I think so many women will resonate with the church often telling us to just believe more, just do it. And sometimes those things aren't really helpful. That process and that journey that you went through of getting real with yourself and being like, these are the tangible things that God has given me in my sphere of control, and then everything else is laid to the wayside. Even in that space, I would say that there's a bit of self-control at play where you're like surrendering, but you're also telling your heart and mind, don't go back to them. Don't try and control them again. And it's this like balance of surrender and then putting up boundaries and saying, once I release it, I'm releasing it. I'm going to let it be in God's hands and not turn back to it and try and have my hand in it again. And do you feel like you resonate with that at all?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's such a good point, because again, this is something I talk about in my classes and on my podcast too. But surrender isn't like just laying on the floor and then being like, what's going to happen? There is, again, that big word intention behind it, and action. It's an actionable thing you do. It's a decision you make every single day. And I still have to remind myself, you have to be mindful of, am I giving this to God? Like, I have to check myself. Am I trying to fix or control something that I have already surrendered? And then, like, it's a daily reminder to yourself. It's something you do consistently and constantly. It's not just a one-time deal and, okay, I surrendered it. No, you absolutely have to check that you're not getting distracted or pulled to the wayside or falling into old patterns. And I think sometimes that's confused. Like, surrender is not just a passive thing we do. It's a very active process. And I think too, the other thing you said that goes back to something we talked about earlier, but with just trusting that God knows better than you. So earlier in our conversation, when we kind of mentioned, like, if I handed this over, what could my life look like? You might not know the answer to that question, but what you should know and believe is that you can trust God to make something bigger and better out of giving it to him. You might not know, if I lay this down, like, for me, it was scary. It could have went one of two ways. Like, my husband could have not followed me. He could have spiraled deeper, and that would have been really hard, but I would have just had to trust God that for whatever reason, this is the way it went. And so I don't want women to be discouraged by, well, it's scary to put that down because I don't know my life might look like or what might be different. I don't know. You don't have to know. You just have to trust that God does. And that God has plans for you.
That's such a good point, because you're basically coming into agreement with a big question mark, a big unknown. If I say yes to this, what's on the other side? You make such a good point. That's a huge element to surrender that feels so scary, because we don't know what's going to happen. And control is a trust issue. And it really presents this heart posture of, it's not that we are controlling because we want to predict everything that's going to happen, but we trust ourselves. And so when we are not able to surrender, we're wrestling with, who are we trusting? And so even in that act of, I'm letting this go, God, and I don't know what's going to happen, I'm trusting you, that builds our faith in that one moment. And I really believe that we often underestimate God's grace when he is calling us into seasons that like stretch us in our faith, that call us to do things that make us uncomfortable, like surrendering, like releasing control. He meets us with his grace. And when we struggle with control or releasing that, we feel like that is all on us, that the entire burden is on us, whether it makes or breaks us. This is the moment and it's on us. And I think we forget that his burden is easy and his yoke is light, and he desires to meet us right where we're at in our messy, our uncomfortable, our imperfect, and he will partner with us in making that active decision of surrendering. And I think we often overlook that.
Yeah, that's so good. That's such a good point. And it really is. It's a trust issue. And I think it can be easy for us as Christians to say, oh yeah, I trust God. Like, because that's what we're supposed to say, but do you really? And it's hard because until you fully trust him, you don't really see where that trust can lead. Like, he's already went before and he's going to meet you there, but you have to allow yourself to walk into that, to trust him he's going to meet you there. And almost to build more trust, because then once you do it, you're like, everyone was right. Like, I can trust him. He does come through. He does meet me there. I can see now in spiritual 2020 hindsight how much better my life has become because I trusted him and not myself. And that's the core of faith, right? Like, I'm just going to have faith that he's going to show up for me if I trust him. And this is the other thing, because I don't want people to have guilt over feeling fearful, because I think that's just a human condition, but you do it anyway. You can be scared, but do it scared. Walk into it scared. Walk into it knowing, like, God, I'm just human. I feel a little uneasy. I feel kind of fearful because I don't know where this is going, but I fully trust you. I'm fully giving it to you, and I'm going to meet you wherever you're leading me on that path.
It's so good to have that reminder that God doesn't expect perfection from us. We think if I'm going to take this big step of faith, I have to do it perfectly. And there's this expectation of, I shouldn't be scared. I shouldn't be anxious or fearful or doubtful. That God wants us to be real with him in the process of surrender and giving things to him. When we walk life with him, he just wants us to be honest with him, and he examines our hearts. So he really knows what's in there anyways. So we can't really hide. No matter how much we try to hide, we really can't from him. And so I think it's so beautiful that he meets us kind of in our mess of humanity, and there's just grace, and he's the one that bridges the gap. And I just love that you are such a champion of this idea of do it scared, do it anxious, do it imperfect, because it's okay. There's no condemnation for those in Christ. And if your motive is pure and surrendering and seeking him, then he'll meet you there. I think that's going to resonate to so many. It's resonating with my heart. There's been so many times in my life where I thought I could clean myself up good enough in order to take this big step of faith, and that just wasn't the case.
I think one of the reasons I feel so passionately about this is because I wish I had someone to tell me these things when I was going through what I was going through, because I knew God was there. I knew that, but I felt very alone. And I did feel like some guilt, and I said I was going to surrender this. So why am I? It doesn't mean it's rainbows and butterflies then from that point out, right? It just means that you're trusting God to make a way through it and to work it out for you, as long as you remain faithful to him and do those things that you can do that are within your control. Stay close to him, get in the word, pray, like keep your end of the bargain, so to speak. And you don't have to feel guilt in being human. He's going to meet you there. Like you said, he already knows your heart. He can handle it. You might not be able to. You might want to hide because you have guilt and shame for whatever reason on what you're feeling or thinking or things you've done in your past. God already knows. He's already done with your past. He has hope in your future for you. He has good plans for your future. God already knows all those things. You don't have to hide from him. You need to be honest with him, really, for the healing of yourself, to be able to move forward with it.
I feel like we can't talk about that enough. When you were talking about making God a priority in your life and giving him your first fruits by just reading your word and praying and communing with him every morning, that's you knowing him. That's you understanding who God is. And how can we trust someone we don't know? And I think we often will overlook the simple beauty and power that comes with just meeting him every day. It's not out of obligation, but out of desire to know him so that we can trust him, right? It's like asking someone that you've never met to, take care of your child. It's like, this is too important to me to give to you. I don't know if I can trust you. And I think we often can come to God with that same mentality of, I don't know if I can trust you with my baby. You know, this is too precious to me. And when we grow in the word and our understanding of truth, we can mature and realize he is trustworthy. He will be faithful to me, and I can trust him with my baby, the thing that's precious to me. And I know that you're passionate about truth too. So I guess my question would be, what does pursuing truth look like in your life right now?
Oh, that's such a good question. So one of the biggest things I often reflect on with truth and teach on too is truth versus lies, right? And so this ties in so well to what you're saying about being in your word, because you need to know God's character, and you need to know who God says you are, who you are to him. Because so often we get in our own head with these lies that we tell ourselves. We're our own worst critic. So critical of ourselves. We speak negatively to ourselves every day, I think sometimes even without really realizing it. And so the truth of who God says you are, because I think if you really know who God says you are and how he defines you and who your identity is in him, like, how could you go wrong? You have to fully trust him, because you know who you are in him, not who you are because of your works, but because of what he has done, who he has created you to be. And I guess I would just really encourage listeners, if you don't know who God says you are, you should really be diving into that, because it makes your identity makes a difference every single day, in every single decision you make, in every thought that you have, in literally every facet of life comes from our identity. And so that identity shouldn't be coming from yourself. It's from who God says you are and who he created you to be. And I think that's the biggest truth. And then we can use those truths to combat the lies that we tell ourselves.
It's so full circle too. And I love that it comes down to identity at the end of the day, knowing who God is and being known by him. I just love that that's what life is all about. And everything else can tend to be a distraction in our lives. And I love that it's so simple. We just need to open up the word and pursue, because he is the way, the truth, and the life. And when we grow in our understanding of truth, I almost feel as though we don't need to actively surrender these things. I think surrender can come sometimes as a byproduct, just overflow, because as we're filling up our cup with truth and of the revelations of who we are in Christ, these things can just fall off of us, which I think is such a cool, not always, some things we're holding on to tight to help get in there and like root it out of our hearts, right? But you know, like he has to get in there sometimes. But other things, in just pursuing him, these things will fall off of us, because when we're close to his holiness and his beauty and majesty, those things have no place in our life. And so as we pursue him, as we pursue truth, we become more like him. And it's just this natural process of growing in him as we know who he is. I think that is so beautiful. Yeah, you're so speaking my language. I think it's so easy to get caught up in the noise, but the truth is and it's in the still, it's in the surrendering. And so we have to slow down every day. And I love that you're right. You're reminding us that it's so important to slow down. And I think that ties into peace as well. The faster we're moving in life, the faster we're thinking, the more anxious we are. But when we slow down, I think that's where peace can really take place and have its way in our life. Yeah. Have you found that to resonate and be true for you?
Yeah, I think, well, and so much of what you're talking about goes back to that maturity piece too, right? Like growing in maturity. I mean, there's no way I could have, but I wish when I was going through all of this, I knew everything I know now. But the only thing I do is because God met me here. And,
yeah.
Right. And so, I guess as far as being still to find peace, I also want to give your listeners the permission to be still. Because if they're anything like me at first, and sometimes I still struggle with this, being still can almost be overwhelming when you've been going and going and going and going. And then I don't know if you ever experienced this, but sometimes I'll sit on the couch and I'm just thinking about all the other things I should be doing. And it's like, I can even give myself permission to take a short break without feeling guilt or like I should be doing something else. And I think moms will really resonate with this. But you need that stillness and you need the quiet. And okay to have that. And it's a lie, going back to truth, it's a lie that in taking a break or slowing down, you're somehow missing something or not doing it. It's not true. God commands us. And I have to remind myself of that all the time. I'm like, rest is a commandment. He carved out the last day for us to rest. Like God rested on the last day. God wants you to rest. So we don't need to be moving constantly, hustling constantly. We can go, one of my little things, of course, is we go from hustle to holy rest. And you need that. You need that.
Yeah. It's such a need. You're so right. We do need that. And you said, I've become this person because I wish I had that back when I was walking through this. And I think so many women will relate to that. I know I do. God will work all things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. So all of our pain really can have purpose in him. But you know, I feel that same way. It's like, I wish someone would have told me. I wish someone would have showed me. And so I love what you are doing now. You are forging this path for this whole other new generation of women to really have someone to look up to, and all the things that you wish you had, the things that I wish I had along this healing journey. And even though God is our ultimate counselor and comforter, and he's the Prince of Peace, on a practical level in fellowship, we need to do life with other women. We need that encouragement and that reminder to give ourselves permission to rest. It's not a sin. And I heard it said once that resting is not a reward for all your effort. I love that you said that rest is really a need, and God showed us that by giving us a whole day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's something to really be reminded of in our culture today, because I think we definitely live in like a hustle culture and within toxic productivity and finding our value and how much we can perform or produce. And God just has such better things for us. I'm like, just the world at every angle is trying to wear us down and break us down and burden us. And like you said, sorry, I'm totally assembling another lie of the world.
I'm curious to know more of your thoughts on if you see hustle culture among the Christian community. We know that the world is like hustle, hustle, go, go, go. But I've seen this pattern in some of the churches I've been in, and where there's this like idealized Christian girl or Christian woman to appear perfect and have it all together and know scripture and be the perfect wife. And that in itself could be translated as you have to hustle in order to meet this standard. I'm curious if you've seen that in your life, and how have you combated that?
Yeah, and I think sometimes hustle is like so well disguised in these good intentions we have to serve. And even like you're giving this list of kind of this perfect Christian woman, right? And then on top of all those things you said, like be a good wife, be a biblical wife, be a mom. There's pressure now. What if you're a working mom and now you're seeing homeschooling is a huge thing right now? Like, then is there guilt if I can't homeschool my kids? And how many Bible studies do I need to lead every year? And what kind of prayer training do I need to be involved in? And how do I serve? And like, it just adds up so quickly. I actually got a phone call, and I still deal with guilt about this. And I'm like, I have to check myself. I got a phone call a couple months ago. It was right before my book was releasing. And my church now has kind of like a special education room for kids that have special needs during service. And there's like a sensory room. And so they had asked me, which makes sense because I'm a school psychologist, so it's what I do for a living. And so they had reached out and were like, hey, can you volunteer and come in? And I remember feeling so guilty and like, I'm going to pray on it. That was my answer. Let me pray on it. I had so much on my plate at that point, and I just wrestled with, how do I say no? Like, how do I say no? This is what I do for a living. I'm specifically being asked to do this and to serve. And I prayed on it and I had to use discernment. And I'm like, I cannot have another thing on my list. And it is okay to say no. Give yourself permission to say no. You don't have to take on all the things. Again, you don't have to be all of the things for all of the people. There's a time and a season for everything. someday when my kids are a little bit older, I hope to be able to serve in my church more.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I'm doing what I can from home with my coaching and with my podcast and what I can to serve God with the tools I have available to me right now. And one of the tools I really don't have is time. I don't have a lot of time right now, and that's because my kids and my family are my first priority. And so it's okay to really look at where you are right now and what makes sense for you, and say no where you need to say no, and pray for discernment in what God is leading you into, or maybe it's a closed door for now, but that doesn't mean forever. And it's okay to not get pulled into that, and you don't have to feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
As hard as that is, because I still struggle with it myself. But
me too, girl. It's such a good point. And there's like such guilt when we do say no. And I love that you're saying, you know, pray for discernment and ask God for direction, because sometimes a no can look like not now. It doesn't have to be an ultimatum or you know, a forever yes or a forever no. And those types of stakes can feel really high when we're asked to do things. I know for myself, I can tend to catastrophize and make these decisions really big. But if we ask God for that discernment, sometimes he'll reveal that maybe it's just for a season that you're going to have a full plate. And maybe the next season you'll be able to say yes to these things. Or yeah, I think that that's an option too, is giving ourselves permission to realize that no sometimes looks like a not right now. And that's okay. And that's not a reflection on our ability or our worthiness or that we're missing out. There's strength in realizing what your capacity is. And there's strength in recognizing that you need rest. And sometimes saying no looks like surrendering these hopes and desires that are attached to that thing or that person or that opportunity. And that's really beautiful. And combating that guilt with just, I trust you, God, and I'm going to give this to you. I'm going to surrender this guilt. And it's this beautiful cycle. We could talk about this conversation forever. And I love that this is what you've dedicated your life to. You've walked through so many moments in life of hardship where the rubber meets the road and you're having to make those decisions of surrender, and you've become an expert at these things. And I think that it's amazing that you are doing so many things in this space where you're encouraging women through your podcast and your book and your courses and your retreats. I think there's so many outlets and things that you're juggling just to provide a space for women to process through these things and learn and grow. And what are some ways that my audience can reach you if they're curious about reading your book or your programs or anything like that?
Yeah, so I think the easiest way is just through my website, because it has all of my links to my social, to my book. All of the things are on there. My podcast is linked on there. So that is, and will we link it in the show notes? Because my name is not the easiest to spell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll link it. We'll have it for y'all.
Okay. So it's BrittonGeorge.kit. Did get a new website URL, and I'm not tech savvy enough to figure out how to use it. So for now,
that's okay, girl.
So find me on my website, and then I do have my course coming up on May 11th. It's a phenomenal price because it's a beta launch of my brand new program.
So good.
I'd love to give your listeners $100 off for that. I can give you a special link just for them, if that's something they're interested in.
Amazing.
But yeah, Called and Courageous Christian Woman podcast, and check me out on my website. You can find me on social.
Amazing. Yes, go and show her so much love and support. I just am so grateful for just your heart for the Lord and all that God has walked you through. Thank you so much for sharing your heart today. I feel like I sat down with a friend and had church at the same time. And for those of you who are listening, surrender isn't giving up. It's giving in, and it's trusting that God is big enough to hold it all, even the parts that still feel unfinished. So keep pursuing truth and leaning into grace and letting go of what God never asked you to carry. I'm your host, Megan Victoria, and I will see you next week.